Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Finally, Kody admits the truth in court, judge sentences him for embezzlement. Sister wives Brown's son breaks silence on Garrison's funeral and Kody. Brown's son breaks silence on Garrison's funeral. Garrison Brown's death devastated the entire family. Sister wives finally addressed the moment he killed himself at the end of season 19. Fans had been waiting for nearly a year to learn the information, and many believed he had been wiped. Nobody talked about him, and many of his supposed scenes had been manufactured for dramatic effect. Garrison's sister, Michael T. Brown Padron, mentioned conflicts with their father, Kody Brown, and his wife, Robin, during the funeral. So, what really happened? Christine Brown Woolley, Kody's third wife, has a very vocal son named Kody Brown. He has never held back and has always spoken the truth. In a recent video, he answered viewers' queries about his father and their relationship. Kody inquired whether fans would dislike him if he was on good terms with Kody. However, he went on to say that they hadn't spoken in a long time, at Garrison's burial. Garrison died in March 2024, so this is more than a year. Finally, he remarked that he would not delve deeply into that because it did not go as he hoped. As a result, the sister wife's son has chosen to remain mute on the actual details. Kody did admit that it did not go as horribly as it could have, stating that it went the way it went. Fans were shocked when they saw footage of Garrison's funeral, where Kody appeared to pour beer down the grave. However, each of the youngsters grieved and celebrated differently. It's uncertain whether Kody's issues with his father will be addressed in season 20. No one is shocked. Fans of Sister Wives anticipated this development in Kody Brown's relationship with his daughters. Christine Brown Woolley has already stated that he was not reaching out, so this tracks. At the same time, many people wondered what transpired at Garrison's funeral that caused such a rift. Nonetheless, they were disgusted by Kody's behavior and how he had neglected his children. I am very curious to know what went down at Garrison's burial. Many of the older kids have mentioned something. Wow. I can't understand a dad who loses a child and then refuses to try to mend the relationship with his remaining children. Just wow. *CK Kody and Robin with as much disdain as possible. Especially Kody. One commented that the kids were too good and should leave Kody behind. They were on the right track, all they needed to do now was stay focused. Finally, Kody admits the truth in court, judge sentences him for embezzlement, and the moment could only be described as the most shocking climax in the entire Sister Wives saga, because after years of financial speculation, whispered rumors of shady dealings surrounding Coyote Pass, failed business ventures, and the endless tug-of-war over money between his wives and ex-wives, Kody Brown finally stood before a judge, his carefully curated bravado stripped away, and admitted in a trembling voice that he had, in fact, misappropriated funds from family accounts, manipulated the trust that had been built when the wives pooled their incomes for what was once supposed to be a united dream, and used money that wasn't solely his for his own gain, and when he said it, you could feel the tension in the courtroom crash like a tidal wave, because Christine, sitting in the back with David Woolley by her side, gasped and shook her head as if all the sacrifices she made, handing back her share of the land, leaving with dignity while knowing she had poured years into that communal pot, were finally validated in the harshest way possible. Janelle, who had long suspected inconsistencies and had been left scrambling when rental deposits weren't returned or promises about home building on Coyote Pass collapsed into dust, clenched her fists, tears streaming down her face not just from the betrayal but from the crushing realization that the financial stress she endured while raising her kids and trying to maintain independence had been rooted in deception, and Mary, stoic yet visibly wounded, sat further away, arms crossed, her lips pursed, remembering every time Kody told her there wasn't enough money to fund her bed and breakfast dreams, every time she was asked to sacrifice, only to now learn that sacrifices were demanded while he siphoned cash elsewhere. Meanwhile, Robin, dressed in black, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights, sat at the front with trembling hands, torn between supporting her husband and facing the humiliation of knowing that the jewelry business she had hoped would thrive and the home they fought so hard to maintain might have been entangled in the very embezzlement scandal unraveling in real time. and while Kody's legal team tried desperately to argue that it wasn't malicious, that he was overwhelmed, that the complexities of polygamous finances were too entangled for clarity, the judge remained unmoved, pointing out that financial documents don't lie, that transfers were made to accounts in Kody's name alone, that funds meant to be shared among wives and children were diverted, and as Kody finally admitted to the charges, his voice cracking as though decades of stubborn pride had finally been shattered, there was a haunting silence in the courtroom, broken only when the judge delivered the sentence, years behind bars for embezzlement, restitution payments that would force the sale of assets including what remained of the family's Arizona holdings, and a mandate that Kody confront the financial wreckage he left behind, and in that moment, the entire story of Sister Wives felt less like a quirky family experiment in plural marriage and more like a cautionary tale of hubris, pride, and the corrosive power of unchecked control, because Kody, who once strutted across TV screens with golden curls and a booming confidence, was now reduced to a man in handcuffs, head bowed, his ex-wives both vindicated and devastated, his current wife utterly broken, his children left to process the fact that the father who preached about principles and unity had crumbled under the weight of greed, and the cameras that once followed him into polygamous chaos now documented his downfall in a sterile courtroom, where the truth could no longer be spun, and as reporters rushed to file their breaking news, fans debated whether justice had finally been served, whether this was karma for the way he dismissed and belittled Christine, for the way he withheld emotional support from Janelle, for the way he abandoned Mary, or whether this was the tragic implosion of a man who had tried to carry too much, and yet the facts stood undeniable. Kody Brown was guilty, sentenced, and forced to live with the knowledge that his legacy was no longer defined by plural marriage on TLC but by financial betrayal that left scars on every person who once trusted him. And as the bailiff led him away, whispers filled the room, some saying he deserved everything he got, others pitying the broken man, but all acknowledging that the truth, long avoided, had finally been dragged into the light. Finally, after a protracted legal battle characterized by obfuscation, meticulously crafted alibis, and a steadfast refusal to acknowledge the mountain of evidence stacked against him, Kody admitted the truth in court. The moment arrived not with a dramatic, self-incriminating monologue, but with a quiet, almost imperceptible sag of his shoulders, a deflation of the arrogant posture he had maintained throughout the trial. It was a simple, monosyllabic response to a final, direct question from the stern-faced judge, who, growing weary of the legal theatrics, had demanded a yes or no answer regarding his central involvement in the sophisticated embezzlement scheme. The word yes escaped his lips, not as a roar of confession but as a defeated whisper, a mere puff of air into the courtroom microphone that nonetheless echoed through the silent chamber with the force of a detonation. That single, admitted truth instantly vaporized the complex web of denial his defense attorney had so painstakingly woven, laying bare the stark, unvarnished reality of his crimes. The victims, seated in the gallery, did not feel vindication in that moment, they felt a hollow, weary ache, for the admission did not undo the financial ruin, the broken trust, or the emotional devastation he had wrought. It merely confirmed what they had always known in their gut, transforming their private certainty into a public, legal fact. This admission, though long overdue, fundamentally reshaped the atmosphere in the wood-paneled room. The air, once thick with the tension of contested facts and legal jousting, now grew heavy with the grim gravity of impending judgment. The judge, a figure of imposing dignity whose weathered face had borne witness to every shade of human failing, adjusted his glasses and began to speak. His voice, usually a neutral instrument of the court, now carried a profound and somber weight. He methodically recapitulated the case, not for the record, but for the soul of the room, detailing how Kody, a man entrusted with the financial well-being of his colleagues, his friends, and his community, had instead systematically betrayed that trust. He spoke of the forged invoices, the phantom vendors, the illicit transfers masked as legitimate business expenses, painting a picture not of a crime of passion or desperate need, but of one of cold, calculated greed. The judge highlighted the profound breach of fiduciary duty, emphasizing that the most egregious wound inflicted was not merely the financial loss, which was substantial enough to bankrupt a small family business and evaporate the retirement savings of several longtime employees, but the corrosive assault on the very concept of trust itself. He spoke of the community that now looked upon one another with suspicion, of the charitable organizations that could no longer fund their outreach programs, of the employees who now questioned their own security and worth, a ripple effect of misery emanating from Kody's singular avarice. Then came the sentencing. The judge's tone, which had been didactic and measured, hardened into one of unequivocal condemnation. "The court," he intoned, his eyes fixed on a now ashen-faced Kody, "has a duty not only to punish the guilty but to denounce unlawful conduct and to deter similar crimes by others who might be tempted to follow the path of easy money and hard consequences." He declared that a non-custodial sentence would be a mockery of justice, an insult to the victims who had been forced to relive their trauma throughout the trial. Therefore, for the count of grand larceny in the first degree, and on each subsequent count of fraud and falsifying business records, the judge pronounced a sentence that sent a visible shudder through Kody's frame. He was sentenced to a term of 7 to 15 years in a state correctional facility, his remorseless exploitation of his position and the sheer scale of the theft mandating a punishment that reflected the severity of the offense. Furthermore, the judge ordered full restitution, a financial albatross that would hang around Kody's neck long after any potential release, ensuring that every future asset, every future paycheck, would be perpetually shadowed by the debt he owed to those he had wronged. The finality of the gavel's crack was not an end but a beginning of a new, harsher reality. As the bailiffs moved forward to apply the cold, metallic click of handcuffs around the wrists that had once signed the fraudulent checks, the last vestige of Kody's carefully constructed persona crumbled away, revealing not a mastermind, but a small, broken man being led away to confront the consequences of his own choices. The truth he had finally admitted had set no one free, it had merely locked the door on his own future. For the victims, the sentence offered a measure of closure, a tangible affirmation that the system had seen their pain and had responded with gravity. Yet, as they filed out of the courtroom, there were no celebrations, only a collective exhalation of exhausted relief. The money, perhaps, would slowly be repaid, but the trust was gone forever, a casualty of one man's weakness. The story of Kody's embezzlement concluded not with a lesson about the allure of crime, but with a stark warning about its ultimate, desolate price, the total and irreversible forfeiture of one's freedom, one's standing, and one's very sense of self, all traded for the fleeting illusion of wealth and leaving behind nothing but a trail of ruin and the cold, enduring silence of a prison cell.